So in this video, I'm going to go over some more graphing of radicals. So just some more practice, guys. That's all this is, okay? So first of all, our equation here is f of x is equal to negative 2 square root of x minus 2 plus 1. So our transformations, if you recall, this negative right here would mean it's a reflection over the x-axis. And remember, everything outside that radical is a vertical change, and everything under the radical is a horizontal change, okay? So then we got our 2 right here, and that 2 is going to be a vertical, because again, it's outside the radical, stretch by a factor of 2. Okay, and then this other 2 right here, remember, we change anything that's under there. So this is actually a positive 2. So it's going to be 2 right. And so we're going to move the direction that we would think if it was a positive 2. And that would be right. If it was a negative 2 that we pulled because there was a positive 2 under there, then we would say 2 left. Okay. And then our last thing right here is just plus 1, and that would be 1 up. All right, so now our end behavior. So as we look at this graph, it says as x approaches infinity, remember this is our x-axis, what is happening to f of x? Now remember, f of x is y, right? So this is our y-axis. So as we head right on our y-axis, where is the graph headed? Yes, towards negative infinity. Okay, so now as x approaches negative infinity here, negative infinity, what happens to the f of x? Again, the y. So I'm going to put a y here, again, so you guys realize that's the same letter, right? Or the same notation, okay? So as I head left, what happens to our graph? Do you notice it stops? And where does it stop? Again, we're talking about our y value here. So this point is 2, 1, right? So the value here is going to be a 1, okay? Because that is what our end behavior is talking about, is y values, okay? Now, when we talk about our domain, those are x values, right? So what happens to our x values? They start here at 2, right? And then where do they go to? To infinity, right? So our domain is going to be x is going to be greater than or equal to 2. And what about our range? What happens to our y values? They start at where? 1, and they go down, right? So this is going to be y is going to be less than or equal to 1. Now our interval of increase. Question. If I jump on this graph at the left, what's happening to it? Is it going up or down? It's going down. Those are our y values, right? So it has no interval of increase, but it does have an interval of decrease, and that interval of decrease is going to be where our graph started for our x values, and then it's going to be a point here, it's going to be a ray going to the right, right? Where's it headed? Towards infinity. So this is going to be, our interval of decrease is going to be from 2 to infinity. Here's our next one. This is a square root. Okay, so again, let's start right here with this negative out front. So that's, again, going to be a reflection over the x-axis. Then we've got a negative underneath the radical as well. See this one right here? So this is going to be a reflection over the y-axis. Okay, then what does this plus 1 tell us? 1 left, right? Because again, remember, it's going to be a negative 1, okay? Because when we pull it, we change it, all right? And then what's our last thing right here? This 5. This is going to be 5 up. Remember, anything outside that radical is exactly what it looks like. Anything under the radical, we're going to change. So here again, I'm going to look at my starting point of my graph, and this is going to be negative 1, 5. Okay, and then that graph is headed left. You see that? So as I go towards infinity here with my x values, because that's my x-axis, what's happening with the y values? Yes, it is stopped at 5. Y'all see it? Now when I go left, over here towards negative infinity, what's happening to the graph? Yes, it's headed towards negative infinity. So when we talk about our domain and range, again, our domain are our x values. Where do our x values start? So x is going to be, yes, less than or equal to negative 1, because the arrow's pointed left. And our range is going to be what? Y is going to be, what's happening to the y? Is it getting bigger or smaller? It's also getting smaller, isn't it? So that's going to be less than or equal to our k, right? H and k. Remember, x and y here of our point, and h, comma, k, okay? So now, does this graph, if I get on it left and I write it to right, it does have an interval of increase, but not an interval of decrease, right? So where is it increasing from? So what's over here on the left is negative infinity, right? And where does it stop? At -1, right? So we're going to go from our interval of increases from negative infinity to, again, we're looking at our y values, so that's -1. All right, transformations here. Now this is a cube root graph, right? Okay. So on this one again, we've got this negative out front, so that's still a reflection over the x-axis. All right, now let's talk about that 1/2. Remember, if this is under the radical, when we pull that number, we're going to invert it. We're going to write the reciprocal of it. So this is going to be a horizontal, and it's going to be 2, right? So it's going to be a horizontal stretch by a factor of 2. Okay, and then what does that +3 tell us right here, guys? This +3. 3 up, right? Okay. So now we're looking at our graph here, right? What are our end behaviors? As we head towards infinity, where's the graph headed? Down, right? So it's negative infinity. As we head left to negative infinity, where's the graph headed? Towards positive infinity. Now, domain and range for cube root functions, I told you guys that it's all real numbers, right? In all real numbers, so that's what you need to remember. Now, let's look at this graph again. Jump on it at the left and write it to the right. Is it increasing or decreasing? Well, it's like a roller coaster ride, so it's decreasing. And where's it decreasing from? Negative infinity all the way on to infinity. All right, so this says which statements are true about the graph. Select all that apply. So we're looking for true statements, okay? So I'm going to actually put a dot at this point. So this is 5, 0. So the domain, which would be our x values, right? The domain is x is, okay, where's it pointed? To the left, right? But according to what value? Our 5. So that's definitely not true. Then it says as x approaches infinity, f of x approaches infinity. Well, that's not true. What is f of x approaching? 0, isn't it? So that's also not true. Then we have as x approaches infinity, does f of x approach negative infinity? No, that's not true either, right? Okay. Because again, what is it approaching? 0. The range is y is greater than 0. So is y greater than 0? These are our y values, right? So y is greater than 0. So this is definitely a true statement right here. And then E, the interval of increase. So is this graph increasing, y'all? From negative infinity to 0? No, it is decreasing, right? And where is it decreasing from? Negative infinity to, what is our x value there? 5, right? So that's what it should have been. So that's not true either. And then our final one is as x approaches infinity, what is our f of x? This one is correct. Y'all got me? So that one's correct. And we already wrote it up there, so we should clearly be able to see that. All right, the next one. Which statements are false about the graph? False. Okay, so again, I'm going to put this point right here. That's -3, -4. Don't know what happened there. -3, -4. Okay, that's, again, our starting point of our graph, HKXY. So the domain. So this time it's asking us about false statements, okay? So false statements. So the domain starts at -3 and goes to the right, doesn't it? So x is greater than or equal to -3. That's true. Then it says the interval of increase. Does this graph have an interval of increase? Oh, yes. But where is it increasing from? From -3 on to where? Infinity. So that is a false statement, right, y'all? Because that should be -3 onto infinity. So that's one of my answers. The next one says the range is y is greater than -4. Well, that's true because it starts here at -4 and then it goes up, right? So that's true. That's greater than. Then it says as x approaches negative infinity over here. What is y? Remember, f of x means y. Approaching -3? It's approaching -4, isn't it? Again, that's our y value. So there's another false statement. As x approaches infinity, does the graph approach infinity? That's true. And then the interval of increase, was it from -3 on to infinity? Yes, that's also true. And we already talked about that one, and we fixed it up there on B, okay? All right, so now which statement is false about the graph? The domain of the graph is from negative infinity to positive infinity. Yeah, because the graph goes left and right with arrows, right? So that's true. As x approaches negative infinity, is the graph headed towards negative infinity? Is it going down? That's true as well. The interval of increase is from negative infinity to infinity. Well, first of all, does the graph increase? Yes, because it's going up the whole way, right? So this is another true statement. And then the equation of the graph is f of x equals the square root of x minus 5. So did the graph move 5 down from its original? No. The graph is f of x is equal to the cube root of x plus 5 because it moved 5 to the left. Y'all see that? So that is the false statement. Okay? All right, last one. Which statement is true about the graph? So again, we're looking for true here. Going to put that point at that where the endpoint is. This is our HK. So this is going to be, what is that? -6 comma -1. Okay? That's a -6, sorry. The interval of decrease is from negative infinity to -1. Is the graph decreasing, first of all? That's true, but is it decreasing from negative infinity to -1? No, it's decreasing from, well, yeah, actually, let me think that through. That is true. The interval of decrease is, no, it's from -6 to where? Infinity, right? It's going from -6 to infinity. That's what this should have been. So that's false. As x approaches negative infinity over here, what is our y value, y'all? Shouldn't it be -1? Yep, it should be -1, so that's also false. Then it says the interval of decrease. It does decrease, right, y'all? Is from where? Look right here. From -6 on to where? Infinity, right? So that is our true statement right there. And then the last one, let's just check it. The domain is that x is less than, is that a true statement? Look where our arrow is. This should be greater than, right? Because the arrow's pointed to the right, that should be pointed to the right, okay? So that is also false.